everyone for this second session of the SI learning series entitled Systems Innovation Methodology. I am Yasmin, and alongside my colleague Joss Colchester, we're going to host and facilitate not just today's session, but all the other sessions here in the SI learning series. Okay, this is being hosted by the London Hub, and I'm going to share with you some details if you don't know what the SI learning series is. Okay, so this is going to be a 90-minute session. It's being recorded, and you can find the recording afterwards in our YouTube channel, and I'm going to share the link with you at the end of the session. We are going to have spaces during the session for questions and answers, so please address them. You can address them on the chat. We're going to have a space for you to put them in a mirror board, and we're going to share with you what is going to come next, so you can follow along the session with us. So if you don't know what the SI learning series is, I'm just going to give a quick overview for the ones that didn't attend last time. So this is going to be a 5-month learning journey where you're going to be able to organize your learning, organize your learning and the way that you are involved with this session in the way that it makes sense for you, for your own understanding of each one of these topics, and of course your time availability. So we have 5 modules here that are written on top, and we have 4 main ways in which the sessions are going to be held. And we started the learning session last week, our first session on introduction of systems innovation. And today we're going to cover the tools that we're going to use, that we use at SI, and we're going to use during this SI learning series as well. The next one is going to be case studies on systems innovation to finish this module with a challenge. And then we're going to come back to the introduction to systems thinking and so on until we finish here on the 28th of June. So you can read more about this learning series here. I've put the link so you can find here on this little square here. And please just see there all the sessions that we have. And if you have any questions, you can always message me or Josie. We're more than happy to answer them. Okay, so before we start here, we have this box for questions if you have any. So yeah, you can put here, and of course you can put on the chat as well, or you can just raise your hand and address them. Okay. I don't know what's happening here. But do you have any questions so far? Everything's good? Let me just stop hearing.
Yeah, just to say, I put in the chat there last week's event that was recorded on our YouTube channel. In case you missed that, you'll be able to catch up.
Yes, great. Yeah, thank you, Joss. So we can jump into today's session. Maybe Joss, you can share the screen because I'm having some difficulties here. I don't know what's happening. Do you mind sharing the screen?
Sure.
Yes, great. Yes, thank you. So we can start there on top as a recap of our last session. So here, just a summary of what we've covered. So systems innovation is a transformational change approach. And here you can observe, interact, and change the system as a whole, rather than just changing the parts that are inside the system, right? Because we understand that the simple solutions won't address the reality of what we call wicked problems, right? These are going to just address the top of this iceberg. And as we understand, the reality is a lot more complex than what we firstly perceive. So systems innovation is a process to understanding more about this structure and understanding the ways that we can see the correlations between elements in the system. And as we've covered last time as well, we can see innovation in two ways, right? We can see innovation in just parts, and that's essentially putting products and services out there as a way to just solve a specific problem, right? But systems innovation is more than that, is a way of looking at the system. It's a new way of looking at it, that it's going to bring about not just ideas, but of course, methods and tools that are going to help us coordinating the parts of the system to reorganize the elements inside them. So essentially, we are going to see the system in new ways, but of course, organize them in new ways as well. And today's session is going to be an overview of how we can go about doing systems innovation when we are confronted with a challenge. Right, so I'm going to pass it over to Joss now, who's going to explain a bit more of other approaches that are out there and that were very important for us to develop the SI methodology that we have nowadays. So I'll pass it over to Joss now.
Great. Thank you much, Yasmin. Great to see everyone here. And we're back to talk about methods. How do we do this systems innovation stuff? How do we go about it? Taking those ideas from last week and putting them into practice. And as mentioned, we're going to look at 4 different organizations that have different approaches to this, to doing it, and explore that afterwards. We'll go down and we will, in the last 25 minutes, 30 minutes, start to use this canvas here. We'll look at kind of a method or a process we've developed at SI, and then we'll use the canvas to start to think about what are the important parts in doing a systems innovation initiative. What are the key questions we're going to be confronted with, and we'll need answers to. So we're going to look at that down here in the canvas afterwards. So let's jump in here. So here are the 4 different organizations and their methods we're going to look at today. There are a number out there. I've just selected a few of the most prominent ones. Some of them are quite well-known organizations, but there are many others. And I don't think we need to do an exhaustive review, because I think, as you'll see, there's certain commonalities across them. I think we'll see that emerge as we look at the different approaches. Because essentially they're trying to address the same problem. So you'll see that. So we'll start up here, looking at this. It's UNDP, that's United Nations Development Program, and they're a large organization. It's the largest organ of the United Nations, and obviously they're there to help developing economies grow and develop and so forth. And traditionally, this is quite a traditional hierarchical organization, bureaucratic organization that takes a quite a linear approach really to development and planning some projects that they initiate around the world with different nation states. A couple of years ago, they started to see the limitations of this in 2019, so it's only 3 years ago. They thought maybe there's a different way, maybe in environments that are very complex and uncertain, and maybe development is a very complex thing, and trying to address poverty is a very complex thing, and maybe we could try at least experiment with a different approach. So they set up these things called the accelerator labs. And it's a new way of working in development, or at least an experiment in this. So this is what they say. They set this up with some funding from Qatar and Germany, and they set up 60 labs, you can see all around the world in these different countries. And 78 countries will work together with nations and global partners to find radical new approaches that fit the complexity of current development challenges. Each lab will draw inspiration from both local solutions and those identified elsewhere within the network. So it's a network of different labs, and they're working in parallel. Labs will benefit from each other in real time, creating powerful collective learning effect. So really core to this is the idea of learning. They're trying to learn a better way of doing development. They're trying to actually get closer to the ground. They recognize that the approach they have is quite top down, and they plan things out at a very high level, and they say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. But they're trying to get close to the ground and listen to what people are saying, what are the challenges they have locally, and how can they create these little spaces, these little labs. And they're quite small. The team in a lab is normally just 3 people or so. They put these into different countries, and they're essentially there to learn about the challenge and what innovations are going on locally and how they can build upon, learn from those and work with them. So the accelerator labs are inspired by local solutions that are already working, whether they're a grassroots initiative, an alternative policy solution, or a business that's making the world a better place, which is quite different to their traditional approach, which is very much a top-down kind of planned approach. So this is their method. That's a bit about them. This is what they do. And really core to the whole thing is about learning what there is and the nature of the challenge that people face locally, and how they may best address that and what's going on. So it starts here. The learning cycle. We can see here the first one is around sensing. It's about understanding what are emerging challenges and opportunities in the local context and determining where we need to focus our attention. Secondly, they go to exploring. Explore is about better understanding the challenge and looking for solutions, particularly by looking at how citizens are already addressing these challenges and opportunities. So the first one's sense making, trying to make sense of the context. Second one's about kind of exploring and understanding what's out there. Third is around testing. Testing is about designing a portfolio of potential solutions to intervene at multiple points in the system and continuously testing them until we're confident they're working. So this is called the portfolio approach, where they identify a number of different places in the system they might want to intervene, and then they run, as they say here, a portfolio of potential solutions that they're testing. And then finally, around growing and scaling. Growing is about handing over the portfolio solutions, advocacy for policy change, or spinning solutions off as private ventures. So that's the UNDP Accelerator Labs. It's one example. Anybody have any questions on that one so far? You can raise your hand or you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, we can stay going. Okay. Yeah, I mean, a couple of interesting aspects about that. They do place a huge emphasis on learning and this portfolio of approaches where they're trying to orchestrate a number of different initiatives in a coordinated way. Okay, so that's UNDP and the Accelerator Labs. This one is the Emilia group, which is quite different. This is a, so there a question there, somebody want to ask?
Yeah, is it from Silji? I'm saying it right. Is this framework derived from the Cynefin framework?
Cynefin framework. No, don't think so. I don't think they're related. In fact, yeah. Okay, so the Emilia group. This is a large non-for-profit in the United States, funded by the founders of eBay, and they take a systems approach to some of their work, and they codified that in this guide here that's called Systems Practice from the Media Group by Rob Rixigliani, who we interviewed a while back. And he kind of spells out their approach to systems change here. Also in this course here, it's a good one on systems practice that he teaches with Acumen Academy. There's a good one for learning about this. A lot of people take that course. So here it is. This is, if you're looking for a method and approach to go and do systems change tomorrow, then this one's probably the best one to choose. It's quite simple, and the whole thing spelt out is explained in this guide here. It's a very good guide. I'd recommend it. So just to look at what they've got there, and the interesting thing here is they all seem to have about 4 stages. Anyway, this one actually has a 4+0, which is the launch phase, where they're talking about forming the team, acquiring system practice fundamentals, and planning for the journey ahead. And then secondly here, they're trying to gain clarity, developing a deep understanding of the system, and then building a map that captures the key forces and patterns driving the system's behavior. So not surprisingly, I think we'll find with all of them, it starts with making sense and understanding the system. And yeah, they actually break it down here, right? These are the steps they go through at this stage. Explore forces, analyze cause and effects. They're kind of mapping the system out here. They build a map and craft a narrative and socialize and iterate on your map. And that's explained a bit more there. You'll find all this in their guide. Second one, finding leverage points. Explore the most promising opportunities for engaging the system in ways that could help push it towards greater health. So you'll see this in all the approaches, right? Because there's always going to be 2 things that you have to do here. One is understand the system. So typically that's done through systems mapping of some kind. And then the other thing is you're always going to have to find places to intervene in the system because it's large and complex. You can't do everything. You need to find the places with the highest leverage. And the mapping is going to help you understand how the system is working, and then potentially the best places to intervene, the leverage points. So that's the second phase here, and you can see what they have kind of listed out there around finding leverage points. Develop a systemic problem statement, find opportunities for leverage, articulate leverage hypotheses, evaluate feasible and potential for impact, and so on. So you can read more up there. In the third stage, talking about act strategically. Design and implement an approach that exploits opportunities for leverage to make sustainable social change. Okay, so this is where they're designing and implementing their approach to intervening. Now that you have narrowed down a set of leverage points, you need to think about how you might develop a coherent systems change strategy that maximizes your potential to make an impact on the system. Yep. So, Breeze.
Oh, thank you. I actually, what you shared about the sort of the mapping actually triggered some interest. We use organizational network analysis in my organization that actually involves in quite large scale sort of surveys in the beginning. And now we try to use sort of workday data to generate some kind of passive sensing. And I worry a little bit about the data quality. My question is, in this guide and in this experience, what are signals, like what kind of signals would indicate that sort of the sensing kind of is to the point. The frequency is actually all right, and kind of the actions are kind of fine, the actions are getting closer to the leverage points. Maybe this is quite a broad question. I mean, I think I don't have a clear sort of answer idea. What do you think?
Well, I think, as you say, it's a broad question, but I think you're getting to maybe this last part of the stage, which is about, a feedback loop as to, we have this hypothesis, we're going to try these things, we think it might work, but how do we actually get feedback to see if it is working? Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and particularly challenging in our final section of this series. We'll be talking about exactly that, around systemic impact, because this comes to the question of assessment too, doesn't it? Like, how do we actually assess in this context if we're making progress or not, and get feedback about that and feed it in and then adapt and so forth. So it's actually the fourth stage you'll see there, learning and adapting, and it should be part of all of them. But it's a very good question, particularly when you talk about systems change, because it's not linear kind of change, right? We have a lot of good kind of assessment for linear change. We're trying to do this, and we measure how many children are dropping out of school or whatever, and that's a very simple metric, But in systems change, it's something more fundamental. It's something about the quality and health and structure of the system. So it's a more challenging question indeed. So we'll try and get to that in the last section where we talk about systemic impact. And this aspect of learning is really, really core to it. You saw it there at the beginning. Because these challenges are so complex, we have to take this kind of iterative approach and this learning approach to them, because it's a very complex challenge that we don't understand yet. And we've got to spend a lot of time trying to make sense and getting that feedback loop going for these actors to start to learn about how to address this challenge. Yeah, I know that doesn't speak directly to your question, but
it does resonate. I think the reason why I'm asking the question is, like, I do understand there is not a linear causal relationship. Like, I guess what I'm trying to get a sense about is, to what kind of signals, should I look for to know, okay, we're roughly on the right path, because data can tell stories left and right, actually. And I'll look into that.
So Yasmin, do you want to find the guide on impact that kind of speaks exactly to that? How do we actually assess the system's health, right? And it has a series of things there around alignment, around synergies, around integration across the system, and resilience, right? That's going to be one also. So that guide kind of jumps into that. Maybe Yasmin can share it with you. Okay, so the fourth section here then is around, exactly that, learning and adapting, continuously sensing and learning from the system and adapting accordingly. In this step, you'll work through a series of questions to assess and evaluate your understanding of the system and your strategy for engagement. By using the data whilst answering your key questions from the previous step, the reflection questions in this step, your understanding of the complex system will get sharper. Despite its complexity. It's necessary to do a deep reflection on your learning after having engaged the system for 3 to 6 months. So that's the Media Group, their method, systems practice, they call it. You could learn a lot more about it if you took this online course here. I think it's open and freely available. And of course, this guide actually goes into all of it, goes through all those steps and so forth. So if you actually want an approach to kind of take off the shelf and go and do this stuff tomorrow, this is probably the one to take. This is designed to be for other people. The other ones here we're looking at are kind of somewhat designed specifically for those organizations. Any questions, or should I stay going? Okay, so let's stay going. Yep. Next one we'll look at is Climate Kick. So Climate Kick is set up by the European Union's Institute of Technology as the largest innovation ecosystem in Europe for addressing climate change. And it's probably the largest organization explicitly taking a systems innovation approach. And they orchestrate an ecosystem of, you can see it here, over 400 organizations, whether they're universities, businesses, cities, regions, non-profits, and so forth, around this challenge of transformational change in response to climate change, particularly decarbonization, things like cities trying to decarbonize their transport systems and so on, and how they can get these actors working together instead of working in their own silos. Because you can imagine across Europe, there are countless organizations of all different types that have all sorts of ambitions to go to address climate change and become carbon neutral. But if their efforts could be integrated and added up and put together in synergistic ways, they could be much more effective. So that's what Climate Kick's trying to do. They're taking a systems innovation approach to doing that. So Climate Kick is a knowledge and innovation community working to accelerate the transition to a zero carbon, climate resilient society. Has more than 400 global members spanning universities and so forth. Climate Kick catalyzes and supports innovation for climate action, but it is our community members who make it happen. Okay, so let's, yeah, they're trying to move away. It was actually an interesting development because this is European Institute of Technology, which is quite a traditional kind of institution. And they saw a number of years ago that this innovation as usual, which is typically quite a technological kind of driven approach, you can imagine, Institute of Technology, they actually saw that that wasn't getting them to where they wanted to go in this climate change. So they made a big change to this whole systems innovation stuff to try and address this. We need innovation to catalyze system change, is what they were looking for. And this is their method here, their approach. And this is again quite specific in terms of their working with CEOs and you know, mayors of cities across Europe and so forth. So they start by trying to align and agree the intention of their actions. To understand their unique problem space, identify current commitments, and source and secure a clear intention for transformational change. Because they're often working in multi kind of stakeholder environments, they have to get clear intention about what they're doing and alignment. That's number one. And number two, they define their intervention strategy. We map the system that need to change and identify where and how innovation can play a role in catalyzing change dynamics. We start to design simultaneous innovation positions that can contribute to a system-wide change. So identifying a kind of portfolio of initiatives, well, that's what we're getting to here in number 3. For each challenge, we build and map a portfolio of 30 to 100 connected innovations designed to address leverage points identified in earlier stages. These may combine behavioral, technological, citizen engagement, a number of different factors. So that's the third section around portfolio of initiatives to intervene. And then finally, as we talked about before, sense making and feedback. We obviously want to get actionable intelligence to accelerate learning about how to achieve transformation at scale. Feedback loops inform policy making and dynamic management of the innovation portfolio. So that's their method, Climate Kick. Any questions there, or should we stay going?
Do you have a preference, or do you adapt one framework to depending on what the issue is?
Sorry, are you saying which one's best for what, or yeah?
Well, each of these seems to have their own methodology, and I know you've created your own, which is also very good. Do you find one works better for a different challenge?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, well, kind of as I mentioned, they're designed. Many of these are designed for these specific organizations, right? So the UNDP is particularly good at what they're trying to think about how to help these communities develop locally. This one here is good. You know, the Climate Kick one has a huge network of major institution. So it's particularly good for working with, you know, those kinds of actors in those multi-actor environments. This one here is quite traditional kind of systems change approach that any kind of organization might take. This is a non-for-profit, so that's kind of where it's coming from. And this one here is a School of Systems Change that we'll look at, which again is another kind of general, they work a lot in the space of non-for-profits also, so it's kind of coming from there.
Thank you. So
this one is not necessarily a methodology, it's it's a School of Systems Change, which is set up by Forum for the Future. They're based here in London, and they have this different set of capabilities. It's really, they look at it as they try to build as a school in the different organizations and individuals they're working with, so they can build their capacity around systems change. And they think we need these kind of 5 things in place. We need to, diagnose the system so as to understand it. That's always going to be there. Leadership and learning. Things, people to actually lead this change. Innovation for impact. Collaboration and engagement. We need to be developing that. And strategy and design for systems change. So that's School of Systems Change. You can find the different 5 aspects there. I don't think I'll jump into the details at this time. You're welcome to look through it yourself. Great. So that's the 4 sections there. We've got through it relatively fast. If you have any questions, otherwise we can move on to look at the toolkit that we've developed.
Okay, so there's no questions in the chat. So I think we can continue and go to the SI innovation, the systems innovation kit. So as it's shown here, we have developed a systems innovation kit that is going to we're going to share with you the key dimensions to how you can go about doing systems innovation. And of course, each one of these sessions we're going to address in the SI Learning series in different months. So the systems thinking is going to be our next module. The systems mapping and systems inquiry is going to be the third module, sorry. The systems change is going to be the 4th module, and systems building is going to be the 5th module. So we start with systems thinking. And initially, we need to think differently about the challenge that we have at hand, right? So the idea of the systems thinking approach is to move from a linear way of looking at the challenge to one that is non-linear. So it's a holistic way of looking at the world. And here we're going to move from understanding just the parts of the system and trying to dig deeper in analyzing each one of these parts, breaking them down and doing this kind of analysis to understanding the whole that these parts are a part of, right? So we look at the phenomena as a whole rather than just breaking them into parts. So it's here the key word is reframing. How can we reframe our understanding of the challenge from linear to holistic or non-linear, right? And here on the top corner, we have a very good graphic to understand visually how that works. And I really like this one because it summarizes very well the whole idea of systems thinking. So I'm going to put an example here for you to understand that better. So let's talk about the food system, for example, and understand if we have a challenge with the rise of products in the supermarket, right? We can look at it through our own linear way and trying to, I don't know, maybe blame the supermarket because the price is higher, or trying to, understand through our own lenses and through our own needs and perceptions how this challenge is organized, right? And that's what we call the ecosystems approach. But once we move to an ecosystems way of thinking, here we look at ourselves and the supermarkets as just another agent in this whole system, or another actor in the system. So here, instead of looking at the price and looking at the supermarket, for example, as the cause of the rise of the price, we try to look at the system as a whole. And here we start to understanding that it's not just the supermarket, but maybe the transportation system, maybe the producers, maybe the regulatory bodies. There's a lot of things going on here for us to see the rise of rice, or the products that we have in our daily lives, right? So this is the reframing part that I'm referring to. And that's essentially what we're going to cover in this systems thinking module. So I see Erika has her hands up. Would you like to ask any questions?
Thank you so much. Just a quick question. Where does human-centered design fit into that? Or do we need a new kind of design methodology that's not human-centered? Thanks.
Yeah, maybe I could speak to that. Often we put a lot of the design, the whole system design, in this last section about how we design kind of a platform to support this set of ecosystem, set of actors. And I think human-centered design is part of that. How do we design something that really works for people? But it's also got to be on another level in terms of working for the system also. So you've probably heard systems design or systemic design. And that kind of comes in here, but I think we really need both, right? It doesn't work for the users if we don't really, focus on them and actually creating something that really works for them. It's probably not going to be adopted, right? But at the same time, it has to work for the whole system too. So I normally have it as part of this final section. Yeah. But it's a good question. This one often throws designers, user-centered designers off track, because they think, oh, we're supposed to design stuff for users and so forth. But maybe I can just say a quick word before we move forward. So I think it's interesting this, because if you look at this, it's inevitable that each paradigm is going to lead to a different way of responding to the world, but a different way of going about changing things. Because if you're here and you mentioned food, right, and you've got a problem, you're experiencing the problem. You're saying, this is a pain point I have, and I believe it's that thing there that's creating the supermarkets or whatever. So you're going to go and try and fix that problem there with the supermarket, aren't you? And that's the whole paradigm, and that's a lot of what we do. But this here then is actually going to create a whole different approach, because you recognize that it's not just a supermarket. We can't just fix the supermarket. We actually have to work with the system and make that whole thing better.
Yeah, exactly. And that leads to the second dimension that we have here, which we call systems mapping or systems inquiry, right? So now that we reframed the way that we look at the challenge, now it's the moment to understand and map out the system as a whole. So here we want to observe before we actually do any type of action, right? As Joss was saying, first we need to understand the system, see how it's working, identifying the relevant points to then do any type of change. And here, the idea is understanding the system that we want to change, and the system that is around the challenge that we identified in the first place. So as an example as well, the same example of the food system, before we saw the rise of the product, right, as just one part of it, but now we can look at the system and identify the different actors that are involved in this challenge. So we have, of course, the farmers, we have, of course, the supermarket, but what about regulatory bodies? What about machinery producers? What about processes? And what about the consumers, right? The people that are actually buying these products. All these things are interrelated, and they all contribute to the dynamics inside the system. And this is essentially different from the systems thinking, because systems thinking is more about reframing, is about the theory, right? And thus the part after that is going to be the systems change, which is about the actual influence part of in the system. So this is about really understanding the dynamics that are happening here, and then we can go about and do something about it. And essentially, as a summary, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions, or Joyce, would you like to mention something here?
Happy to answer any questions if anyone has them, but yeah, it's essentially zooming in. And I think, as you mentioned, this first section setting us on the right tracks on the right track forward by framing it. And there's that quote by Einstein that said, if you gave me an hour to answer a question, I'd spend 59 minutes thinking about the question, and then 1 minute or something to answer it. And he's trying to make sure that we've got the right question. We're answering the right question, when quite often we're not. And that's what we're doing here. But then once we're on the right track, once we're really looking at the system, we then actually need a more detailed understanding of it, how it's working, the different stakeholders and actors in that system, and the dynamics that are at play there. And essentially those first two sections are about really understanding what's going on, because without that, we're inevitably back in the world of just reacting to the problems that we immediately perceive, without an actual capacity to really understand the forces at play, the dynamics underneath that we need to influence if we really want to get a different change the system. Yeah.
Great. Yes. Yes, and the third key dimension here is going to be systems change, or how can we influence the system in a ways that is going to generate and give rise to new ways of organizing, right? So here's about where and how we can influence and enable the change in the system. And I saw here in the comments that you're talking about leverage points and how important that is. And this is the part where we're going to really talk about the best places to intervene in the system. And those are the leverage points, right? Because normally there's not an endless amount of resources, right? We don't have endless money or time or people to actually deal with these challenges. So the leverage points are very important ways for us to identify where the best places to intervene, and then develop or bring about new innovations in the context of the challenge that we're talking about. So here, we're not talking about, let's say, recreating the wheel, right? We want to identify where these new innovations are, bring them together, and then test and see how they are organized in a way that is going to give rise to this new system. So again, in the same example, maybe we identified that we have a very important point in the challenge of the rise of food products is the transportation, right? How this food, this product is transported across the country or across the world. And now it's the point to bring about new ways of understanding the transportation system and see how they are related to all the other factors involved here. So essentially the key word is influencing the system. And that's what we are going to cover in the fourth part of the SI learning series as well. So any questions here?
And is that quote that the future is already with us, it's just not evenly distributed, that as you say, we can't recreate the wheel, we can't build all this stuff ourselves, and most of it's out there already. It's just a question of how do we find those, we call them pockets of the future sometimes, and develop and nourish and grow them, start connecting them into the new system, and start building an ecosystem, which we'll be talking about in this next section, a platform to support it. But that's what you'll find. Often our minds are a little bit limited in their imagination of what's going on around us. And if you're in a relatively complex system, we're starting a challenge with our SI London hub around education. And I'm sure our imagination is very limited about all the things, amazing things that are going on out there across the UK. And it's probably better to start from that perspective, that we don't have the answer, that there's a lot of things, and we should go and explore those, and could we actually develop, grow those, nourish them into a new system. So starting to develop and grow a new system here by working with these pockets of the future.
Great, yeah. And that leads us to the final key dimension here in the SI methodology, which is the systems building. And here, essentially, we want to use all these other aspects that we've covered so far and develop this ecosystem or this platform to grow and scale the new innovations that we have identified before. And we need to bring the actors together, right? We need to make sure that they bring their own experience and their own expertise to be able to create a more collaborative, synergistic platform, right? So here, important things to identify are, for example, activities. What are these people going to do and how they're going to do that? What are the type of activities that they can engage? How we can assess the impact or the progress of this platform that we are creating. What is the value that we're creating here? Is it of any value? Can we do something different? And what is the story as well that we can tell about this challenge and this ecosystem? What is the identity that we're creating? We can talk about roles as well, and ecosystem, and that's, as Josh said before, this is where the design actually comes about, how we can design in a way that all these different actors and elements can be able to co-create this new ecosystem that we're talking about. So here, essentially, the key word is building, and building together and co-creating. And that's the idea that we want to bring to the fifth module of the SI learning series as well. So that's essentially it.
Yeah. So this is creating the right context and the right tools and the right support for developing this new system, really. This new network of actors, this new way of doing things in the system, a new way of working together, and nurturing and growing that, and also scaling it too. That's the interesting thing, that if we are, systems change is about changing the system. So if we're going to be successful in that, it ultimately means this is going to be widespread. This is going to be the way this system works in the future. It's actually going to be the norm. It will be the institution. And that's what we're aiming for, which is quite interesting, because we normally start off with very small initiatives, very small, fringe activities that are in the minority. But ultimately, we're going to have to create an institution here that really is a new way of doing things in the system. So this part is a lot about how do we grow this? How do we scale this? How do we create the right value model, so that we understand why these actors are getting involved. What are they really getting from this? Is it creating value for them? Is it creating value for other people? The assessment aspect, we talked a little bit about that before. Are we actually growing a healthy system here? Are we actually getting alignment across these actors? Are we actually getting synergies and integration and so forth? And then the different activities is like, these people need to connect, they need to learn together, and they need to co-create together. So we're going to have to create spaces for them. Maybe like this, SI is a platform, right? And we're creating a space here for us to learn together around systems innovation. And if you're creating an ecosystem in education, in health, in whatever area, you're going to have to be doing those activities. And then an identity approach, right? People are going to have a sense that we're part of this thing together, we're doing something together, and this is what it's about. There are other aspects to it. Won't go into all of them now, but maybe we speak on.
Yeah, exactly that. So before
Hey,
we
Josh and Yasmin, how do you guys feel that AI will play a role now with this whole system innovation, system thinking? Is it up? Do you know what I mean? On a high level. I mean, I've been using it, and it's great if I can ask it the right questions, right? That's the key.
Exactly. So it's the humans that create the questions at the end of the day, isn't it? And these automated algorithmic systems can answer them for us, but we've got to figure out the right questions to ask, don't we? So that's one dimension. But complex systems and algorithmic coordination and the information technology have actually risen in tandem, the science and understanding of complex systems over many decades. And we might say it's one way for us to ultimately start to understand complex systems and potentially manage them. There's so much complexity in these systems. The transport system here in London or something, it's so minds can't grasp that, but maybe these very complex, these very sophisticated algorithms can start to help us really understand them through data and visualizations and potentially manage them. Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, hi. So my question is like, as systems thinkers, we want to focus on systems, right? We are desperate to have a systems view, but most of the other actors in the system are so much into at the event level. They are at the firefighting mode all the time because of the deadlines or because of other pressures they have. So it becomes even if they are convinced about a systemic solution, it becomes very difficult to actually implement it. So what is the way to actually solve it? Because for them, they feel, because even if it is a fundamental solution, it looks costly, right? As we know. So for them, it is, even if it is convincing, it is difficult to implement. So that's always a challenge.
Yeah, it probably depends what part of the system you're in, right? That's definitely the experience when you're in the center. You're the incumbent in this system, right? You're maintaining the whole thing, right? You've got a lot of processes, a lot of management and so forth. As you say, you don't have time and so forth. But you also now need to start creating spaces on the edges, on the fringes for these new innovations to start learning and developing and growing. And in those kinds of spaces, you'll find more time and more space, and you have to create those, right? It's like in a corporation, it's built to be an efficiency machine, and there isn't time and so forth, but maybe you need to create a lab or whatever it is, it's a space for these things to happen. So yeah, hopefully that speaks to your question. Anybody else, or should we stay going?
here in the chat, we just have very interesting comments, but no questions.
Maybe just to build upon that, it's the idea of, you've heard of that book of thinking fast and thinking slow, but really to be to do this stuff, there's two kind of dimensions. On one level, we need to think on very long time scale, and that creates more space for us. On another level, yeah, we're in this kind of firefighting mode, and we've got to operate very fast and so forth. I think systems thinking is actually about that, right? It's the whole and the parts, right? It's not just the whole, it's not just the parts, it's both. And I think it is about getting that kind of two-level way of operating where you're thinking long-term and you have that kind of space over that long time, but also a way of responding in the short term also. Yeah.
The problem is at event level becomes very addictive, for most of the people, because it's short-term rewards, right? So the incentive to move towards systems, it's very difficult to convince, even if the incentives are very high, in the future. Not immediate, but at least in the future. But the immediate rewards is like addiction, right? Eating a chocolate. So they are getting immediate rewards.
Yeah. I think it is a thing of creating those spaces for something new to grow, and then develop them until they're at a stage where they have a strong enough value, they can demonstrate their capacities and to respond to things immediately. Yeah. Okay. Let's do that, Yasmin.
Yeah, just quickly here. From Michael, leverage points map is a very powerful way of representing. I have seen WEF using the approach to make connections between elements. Do you have any recommendations on graphic tools? I do.
Yes, you talk about software for building systems maps. Yep. Okay. Yes, so we use a few different ones. Well, we use two mainly. One is this here, Miro, the board we're on at the moment. This is a very manual way of doing it. I use it a lot because I like it. We also use Kumu, which is another tool. I could quickly show you what that looks like. I'll pull it up in a minute, but it's that's the most popular tool for systems mapping, Kumu, K-U-M-U. Yeah, Michael's put it down. Yeah, so those are the tools we use the most. Miro is more manual, and Kumu is you can pull in a spreadsheet, a database, and it can automatically create the connections for you. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so this is just a look at some examples of the stuff we've done, particularly this around climate change. And our climate lab, actually, we have part of our London hub. You can see it here. You'll find it on the website. And this here was some work we did around context mapping and trying to understand this challenge and the different concepts and different dimensions to it. Is actually a bit of a kind of mind map, initial kind of throwing ideas up there to see what are the different factors here, and thinking about how to change the kind of paradigm from more traditional one to a systems one, and we produced a little paper on that. You'll find it on the website. This was an open co-creation we did with a canvas we have called Mapping Leverage Points, where around the outside we posted up all the factors affecting climate resilience in a city, and then on the inside started thinking about how might we change those, and where are the places might we intervene. So that's quite a rapid ideation process and canvas for doing it. Typically, this kind of work takes a long time, but it can be good just to ideate on that. This here, we're starting to build a map of the actors here in the UK around working around climate change. And yeah, this is some of the factors seen from the one above. Yeah, so that's that. And maybe we'll show you some more examples. I think we have some better ones in the future. We did a workshop, an open workshop where we had about 30 people inputting their information about the different organizations here in the UK working on this. So you might take a look at that in the future also.
Yes. Great. And now we want to hear from you, of course, and we want you to jump into the Miro board, and we're going to have a quick workshop here. So essentially, we want to ask you, why do you think these 4 key dimensions that we've addressed before are important, right? And here we have the questions that we are going to be asking, and we are going to each quadrant at time for you to be answering these questions. So the first question is going to be, why do you think we need systems thinking in our change initiative? The second question, why do you think we need to map the systems and to think about leverage points? The third question, why do we need to think about the transition and how to bring old and new actors together? The fourth, why do you think we need to build a platform? So here, those are general questions. We don't want to constrain to any specific challenges. So you can use these questions in the context of some challenge that you may be addressing at the moment. And we can start here with the framing, right? So we are going to have 2 to 3 minutes to post sticky notes here to why do you think we need systems thinking in our change initiatives. So 2 minutes, and then we're going to talk about this part. Okay, and then we're going to move to the other ones all together. But 2 minutes on the clock. And if you have any difficulties with the sticky notes, here on the left sidebar, you have a lot of options, and you can choose the sticky note here is the fourth counting from, oh no, sorry. Fourth counting from top down. And you can just click on the sticky note and click on the board where you want to put the sticky notes and just write there, okay? Yeah, if you have any questions, of course, you can use the chat or just address them. Okay, time. Let's see what we've got so far, and then we can jump into it. We have here to solve problems and avoid, oh, so sorry. Some reason my mirror board is heavy, so I can't see anything actually. Joss, do you mind sharing that? Yeah, sorry. Okay, so we have everything is interrelated. Nothing and no one works alone. Great one. Systems thinking is okay, let's get this one. If you change things in isolation without considering its impacts, it could produce negative consequences elsewhere. The person who posted this one, would you like to explain a bit more about this idea? Erica, great.
Oh, yes, hi. When I had that sticky note in mind, I was thinking that, say, if you do an intervention in, for example, a particular service that you think, will lead to better outcomes, better KPIs, But as a result of that action, it causes negative issues elsewhere, and that's not a good thing. So this is why you should consider things as a system and realize if you do make changes in this little part, then, oh, that's the issue of thinking things in parts, right? So you've got to think about it holistically. Otherwise, your good thing might actually end up being a worse thing overall.
Yes, yes, because we don't have this, an understanding of the whole system, right? We see things in our own perspective. We can be missing out on some points, right? And that can cause a lot of unintended consequences. Great stuff. To understand that all is connected, if try to change one thing, another one will be affected. Great. Systems thinking gives us the holistic perspective. We can deep dive into each element of the system and connect the dots. Because it's the only approach where we think about connections and how our decisions affect the planet as a whole. Great stuff. Great stuff. Ultimately, it's about relationships, not individual actors. Great. Yes, the connections, right? We're all interconnected, as we've seen here. So great. Well done. Maybe we can go to the second part of the second quadrant, mapping. Why do you think we need to map the system and to think about leverage points? So 2 minutes and we can talk about it. All right, awesome. I think the first thing that caught my eyes was because a fish cannot tell what the water is, we need to see the bigger picture. Please, author of this one, what do you mean by that?
Hello. When you're so much engrossed with the problem, you cannot find solutions. So you need to, we need to take few steps back to see the bigger picture, to see the entire connections, relationships between different stakeholders and actors. That's what I mean. So the mapping does provide exactly that. You can see the entirety in a very small space.
Great, great. Yes, we need other animals, right? We don't need just the fish. We need we need people. We need
Yeah,
plants.
if it
We need
needs to make a
everything.
policy decision,
Yes.
They can not only think about themselves, they also need to think about other aquatic animals.
Perfect. Yeah. Diversity in perspective, right? That we definitely need in order to see the bigger picture. Thank you very much. Other things that we have here, it unfolds the entities, gives us a clear picture of complex system as we keep on mapping the complexity of it, right? To avoid silo thinking, shows others just how complex things are. Climate emergency forces us to prioritize. It helps to look at how the elements interact and how interventions can lead to better outcomes. Systems are too complex and need visual aid to identify the points of leverage. Great. Too many variables involved. Yes, great stuff here. To avoid being stuck in your own bubble's perspective. Yeah, so here we're talking about, this diversity, right? We need to bring other perspectives, other ways of looking at things together in order to have a better understanding of what we're dealing with. Though this complexity helps to have something visual as a reference. A lot of people talk about the visuals of mapping and how good it is to actually have something for you to see rather than just keeping to yourself.
It also, we'll be talking about it in a couple of months, but helps us to develop a shared understanding of the system. If we are able to do this process together, then it's a process for negotiating our different meanings and understandings in the system and perspectives and try and get something that's a shared representation.
Right. Yes, that's it. Awesome. So we can jump into the third section now, connecting. Why do we need to think about the transition and how to bring all the new actors together? So 2 minutes on the clock. And the calm song. Great. All right, time's up. I like this one. Collaboration is the new innovation. Who wrote this one would like to comment on that? Okay, maybe not. All right.
Maybe it's the new way of innovating in terms of collective intelligence, right? It's maybe not one smart person who's going to come up with the answer and we're going to turn it into a product and so forth. But we need to get intelligence from across the system and put that together and figure out how to work together.
Yeah, sure. And just through this collaboration that we can really identify something new, right? Something new emerging. The problems are too big to be solved by one actor. Newer audience can bring the fresh perspective. Would agree with that. We can leverage on old actors, we can take inspirations and build on the new. Okay, so the collaboration between old actors and the new actors, right? Learning from the past and avoiding doing the same activities over and over again. So I think the same person wrote these 3 orange ones. Would you like to comment on that? Trudy.
Hi, yeah, I just wrote that one. I didn't write the other ones, but
Oh, okay.
but yeah, I think something that I see often is that maybe there's been a rift or there have been some barriers in the past, and the kind of fear of going back and connecting with those people really, when that doesn't happen, you see maybe the same solutions are tried again and again, and people are always wondering why they fail, but that's because they didn't learn from those that came before them, basically. Even if those relationships weren't good relationships, it's always worth kind of biting the bullet a little bit and getting over those past aggressions.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it gets to the whole idea of kind of trauma and kind of divisions within a community and so forth that need to be addressed if this is really going to be successful. Exactly as you say. Yeah.
Very, very good. Just a couple more here, bringing all the new actors together, as we talked. When we talk about systems, we can't talk in isolation. All actors are part of the system. Ignoring even one will make us ignore the whole system. Good one. Resources from old actors need channeling to create new spaces without undermining old actors' sustenance. Sustainability is largely redistributive agenda. Need buy-in from all, not just those who are on our side. That's great point. Great point.
And it's good to recognize how difficult this actually is, right? We often avoid this for a good reason because it's very difficult dealing with the incumbent actors and somehow enabling a synergy with them. And as you say, the transfer of resources from the incumbent system to the new. We know most of that is not a synergistic relation, right? It's a competition and so forth. So this is difficult stuff, indeed, but it's quite powerful when you see it really work in the way that I often think of that connection maybe between a corporate and a new startup or something, where the startup has certain capabilities, the corporate doesn't, the corporate has distribution channels or whatever, and getting them working together could be a powerful synergy. So it's just one example, but there are many others.
Definitely. Okay, so we can go to the 4th quadrant now. Last one. And here we have, why do you think we need to build a platform? So 2 minutes on this one. Great, time's up. Let's see what we have here. Will help to engage in a system. Any change can be visible to everyone. Everyone can contribute. Good. Systems need a space to exist where different actors can communicate and work on leverage points. Without a platform, the system would just exist in a shared Google Doc. Love that one. So who wrote this one would like to talk a bit on that?
I wrote it. So yeah, basically most of the plans, exist wherever I see, especially in IT systems, nowadays the documentation, everything exists on Google Docs. So there is no way of collaborating properly. So all the change ideas or whatever system change ideas that people have get lost. There's no common tool to sit together and communicate.
Yeah, it's very important how information enables or inhibits us to work together, right? If there's silos in our Google Docs and our data and our ways of organizing, we're not going to be able to actually collaborate effectively.
Yeah, and the resistance to move away from the old way of Excel sheets and Google Docs, it's still difficult for people to move from. Even very top IT firms are finding it difficult to move from those systems. So that's
well. Tell them about what we do here on mirror boards, and that's the way to go. Yeah. Everything at SI is a mirror board.
Yeah. Okay, so we have coordination, cooperation, representation of the system. Good platform ensures longevity of any new ideas to enable systems change in a given context. It creates path dependency. Helps to coordinate all activities together, establishes a key meeting point where learning and progress is supported. Very good. Yes, essentially, now that we understood how people can work together is to create this space for that to happen, right? That's why building and co-creating designing is so important here. And yes, I think those were very relevant points that you put here. And well, I hope that by now, at the end of the session, you could understand a bit more about the key dimensions of the SI methodology, and of course, why those are important in our journey towards creating systems innovation endeavors. And yeah, great. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here with us today. It was a great session. Thank you for your participation here in the workshop as well. So to continue this journey with us, we have our next session next Wednesday at 5 p.m. UK time on case studies on systems innovation. So I hope to see you there. Here you have the site here, the link. And of course, we have the mapping leverage points tutorial or masterclass, how you want to call it. And we have the link here as well, where it's going to be a 2-hour session learning about mapping and leverage points and all that. And as you've mentioned during this session, some of these ideas, those we're going to cover those in this masterclass. So please find the link here. And yeah, join us in this learning series and masterclass and everything that we have on the website. And that's it. We have our website here, our LinkedIn page. On YouTube, we're going to put this recording and all the other recordings that we're going to do here in the learning series and all the other events. And we have Twitter as well. So you're more than welcome to join us there. And here we have a feedback part of it. So if you want to just grab a sticky and answer these questions on this scale, it would be very good for us to keep on improving the way that we do these workshops and all the events that we do. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone, for coming. It was a great session today, and hope to see you on the next one on the SI Learning Series next week. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Great. Take care, everyone. See you next time.
See you.